Americans actually introduce sanctions against their own European partners. They don't just do it against Russia, but against other nations as well. And this is what they do. This is an established practice of theirs. And the Europeans swallow it up. Once again, reaffirming, confirming that they are vassals of America.
This is my video update on this Saturday afternoon, May the 18th. Let's talk about some news, and let's start things off with Putin's press conference in China, where the Russian president said some very interesting things as he was speaking to the media, taking questions from reporters. And Putin, he said that Europeans are vassals to the United States. I agree with him on that one. I think most everybody agrees with him on that one. I imagine even the Europeans would agree with him on that one. In reference to sanctions, Putin said that when the US places sanctions on Russia, they indirectly are placing sanctions on Europe, and the Europeans, they just swallow it up. That is what Putin said. They swallow up the US sanctions. Thank you, sir. May I have another? Thank you, sir. May I have another? They also swallow up pipeline sabotages, but Putin was talking about sanctions. What else did Putin say? Before the press conference ended, the final question was on Macron, and they asked him about Macron's strategic ambiguity and French troops in Ukraine, and Putin told the reporter, "I'm not the president of France. You should ask the president of France about troops in Ukraine, French troops in Ukraine, and strategic ambiguity." Putin said that once they get Macron's answer, if you ask him that question, once he gives his answer, then Russia will act accordingly based on Macron's answer. Putin was also asked about Elensky's legitimacy, given that Zelensky's term runs out on May 20th and May 21st. The man in the green t-shirt becomes the unelected president of Ukraine, who can play the piano with his pee-pee. And here is what Putin said when he was asked about Zelensky's legitimacy. He said, to us this does matter, because if it comes to the signing of any documents, surely we should sign documents in such a momentous area with the legitimate authorities. That was his response to Elensky's term running out. And what else did Putin say? He was asked about the Switzerland peace formula and his thoughts on that event that is going to happen in about a month. The Swiss peace formula is based on Elensky's peace plan, which, in my opinion, was written by the Biden White House and given to Elensky, but the event that's going to take place in Switzerland is going to be a discussion and a debate based on Elensky's peace formula, which calls on the Russian military to pull back from their positions. It says that Russia should pay reparations to Ukraine, and it calls for a tribunal of the Russian government. And a whole bunch of countries, on the request of the United States, are going to gather in Switzerland, and they're going to rubber stamp this peace proposal. That's what they're calling it. And they're going to hand it to Russia. That's the Switzerland Peace Summit. And Putin was asked about this event. And Putin's response was they want to gather as many nations as possible, convince everyone for the best proposal, that the best proposal is the terms of the Ukrainian side, and then send it to us in the form of an ultimatum. He said, is that the way one negotiates seriously? Certainly not. And finally, we have what I believe to be the most interesting Q&A exchange with the Russian president from the press conference in China. And that was the question on Kharkov. What is the Russian military up to in Kharkov? And Putin's response was that Russia is creating a buffer zone. That is what Russia is doing, at least today. Putin said today the plan is to create a buffer zone, a cordon sanitaire. That is what we are doing. As for the capture of Kharkov, there are no such plans for today. No such plans to capture Kharkov today. Tomorrow? I don't know. Who knows what the plans are tomorrow? But that's what the Russian military is doing in Kharkov. And Putin said that this is in response to the constant shelling and attacks on towns and villages and cities like Belgorod, which are close to the borders with Ukraine. So in response to the shelling, Russia, according to Russian President Vladimir Putin, has been forced to create the buffer zone. For today. For today, that is Putin's reply to that question. Now, The Guardian, they put out an article the other day with the title, How Russia Has Advanced in Kharkov Despite Warnings Attack Was Coming. So in this article from The Guardian, they report that Ukraine was warned about Russia's Kharkov offensive many times by many sources. The Guardian says that Putin warned about a Kharkov offensive, that Lavrov warned about a Kharkov offensive. It says that Ukraine military officials and the mayor of Kharkov warned about some sort of an offensive in Kharkov. And the most important part of this Guardian article, and the reason that the Guardian published this article, was to report that British intel, they warned about a Kharkov offensive. So everyone warned the Elensky regime about a Kharkov offensive, and according to The Guardian, what happened? Well, the Russians advanced because the defenses were thin to absent. That is what The Guardian reported. Thin to absent defenses and fortifications. So everyone is blaming Elensky, the Elensky regime, for the failures in Kharkov. Ukrainsky Pravda, they published that article a couple of days ago talking about all the money that was given to the Elensky regime so that they could build fortifications in the Kharkov region, and the money went to fictitious companies. It disappeared. And that article from Ukrainsky Pravda, I am 100% certain, or 99.999% certain, that Ukrainsky Pravda, they published that article condemning the Elensky regime and all of the corruption in the Elensky regime at the behest of the Biden White House and the Pentagon, so that they can blame the Zelensky regime for Russia's advance in Kharkov. And now we see The Guardian. They are publishing an article, I imagine on behalf of British intel, so that they can also claim that they warned Zelensky that a Kharkov offensive was coming and you better do something. And Elensky and the Ukraine military and Budanov and Sirsky and all of these guys, they did nothing. Elensky and his crew, they are getting thrown under the bus with this Kharkov offensive. The Washington Post, they're blaming Starlink. That's right. They're saying Starlink is to blame, or is partially to blame. They put out an article with the title, "Second Russian Invasion of Kharkiv Caught Ukraine Unprepared." And in this article, the Washington Post says that the Ukraine military officials, they had no indication of the Russian military advance because for some strange reason, they claim that Starlink stopped working. So it's Elon Musk's fault. Blame Elon Musk. That is what the Washington Post is saying. Elensky, he's giving interviews to Collective West Media, claiming that this is just the first wave of Russia's advance. He was speaking to the AFP the other day, and he said that we are now at the beginning of Russia's Kharkov offensive. What we are seeing now is the first wave, according to Elensky. Up. Whew. And it's hot. It is hot today. And Elensky, he wanted to let everybody know that everything is under control. Everything is under control. No need to worry. No need to blame me for the debacle in Kharkov because we've got everything under control. That is what he told the AFP. The Wall Street Journal, they are reporting that a week ago, Ukraine, they requested from the Biden White House permission to use U.S. weapons to hit deep into Russian territory. We're not talking about Crimea. We're talking about pre-2014 Russian territory with U.S. weapons. Basically, what the UK has done by giving permission to the Ukraine military to use British weapons to hit Russian territory, for which the Russian Foreign Ministry called in the UK ambassador and gave the UK ambassador a warning. Then they started up tactical nuclear drills. It looks like the Biden White House, they're about to sign off on the same thing, which is to allow Ukraine to use American weapons to hit Russia. According to the Wall Street Journal, this request was made a week ago, and the Biden White House, they are now reviewing this request from Elensky, which means that this request has already been approved. If they're saying that this request was made a week ago, then it means that this request was approved a couple of months ago. That's how I read it. And that I imagine the U.S. military is already working to provide the intel so that American weapons can hit Russian territory and so that they can test Russia's warnings. That's where we are. Russia's given the warnings, though it was not to the US. They gave the warnings to the UK and to France. But it looks like the US is going to test those warnings. That is what the Wall Street Journal is reporting. So in the next, I don't know, next week or 2 or 3, expect, maybe expect some ATACMS to be launched into Russian territory. Targets that have been picked out by, I would imagine, by US surveillance, I don't know. And the Russian warnings will be put to the test. Today is May 18th, so we have the mobilization also starting in Ukraine. May 18th. And from what I understand, Ukrainian military-aged men are not so hot on the idea of being sent to the front line, being mobilized, captured, thrown in a van and being sent to the front lines. All the indications are pointing to the fact that the mobilization will not go well. That's how it's looking. But it has started today, and we will see. Because Ukraine's big problem, one of their big problems, is that they are short on manpower. Attrition, the war of attrition has worked. And Ukraine needs people to send to the front line. They need weapons and ammunition as well, but their big problem is a people problem, a soldier problem. So will the mobilization, this mobilization law, will it solve Ukraine's people problem? Their soldier problem? I don't think so. I think it's going to fail, and we're going to get to the point where the request will be for NATO to step in. That is where we are heading towards. Once the announcement is made that the mobilization has been a failure, there's only one way to solve this manpower problem, this shortage. There's only one way, and that is for soldiers to come from elsewhere. And that elsewhere is NATO. That's going to be the next request that is going to be made from the Elensky regime. What else should we discuss here? Let's see. The Telegraph. They're freaking out, the Telegraph, over the Putin-Xi meeting. Boy, did the Telegraph freak out. They put out an article with the title, "Is Joe Biden even aware of the catastrophic damage he has done? America's blundering president has emboldened the axis of evil in its quest to destroy the free world." Oh, man. Maybe I'll put an archived link of this Telegraph, UK Telegraph article. Because, wow. Some serious panic and some serious cope going on. Freaking out over Putin and Xi meeting. Freaking out at the rise and the strength of the axis of evil. The axis of evil. Oh, they hate us for our freedoms. Yep. And the Telegraph is talking about how blundering, incompetent, delusional Biden is allowing the axis of evil to destroy the international rules-based order. You should read this article. I will put an archived post link to this article in the description box because it is a freak out of epic proportions. Oh, man. That hug really, really spooked them, huh? Oh, man. I think the Telegraph in this article, they say that Biden is the worst president, like in all of U.S. history. I thought the adults were taking over the White House when Biden won. Isn't that what they were telling us? Isn't that what the UK media was telling us? The adults are back in the White House, and now he's the worst. He's blundering Biden, according to the UK's Telegraph, America's blundering president. Oh, man. Let's see. Can we get down here? I don't know. There's a way to get down here. Let's see. So Trump, he also talked about the Putin-Xi meeting. The hug heard around the world. Let's hope I don't slip and fall. That would suck. Opa. Haha, made it. All right. That wasn't so hard. I wonder why there's no one here. This would be a great spot to put a blanket down and enjoy the water for today. So yeah, Trump was, I think he was speaking outside of the courthouse or wherever he was. And he talked about the Putin-Xi meeting, the Putin-Xi hug. Here is what Trump said.
But I saw something today that's maybe worse than anything. President Xi of China, I know him well, and President Putin of Russia, I know him well. They're right now together working on plans where they combine, where they get together and do damage, because that's ultimately what they're thinking about, doing damage.
So that was Trump speaking outside of, I believe, a courthouse, talking about Putin and Xi doing damage. I think the damage was done by Biden, actually. Maybe Trump should not have given Johnson his blessing to send the $61 billion to Project Ukraine a couple of weeks ago, just saying. But yeah, doing damage, according to Trump. That is what Xi and Putin are up to, which is Trump's way of saying that they're trying to move away from the dollar. That's what Trump means when he says that they're trying to do damage. Trump understands that the U.S.'s power comes from its reserve currency. And if more countries move away from the USD, and if the reserve currency power of the USD lessens, then yeah, there's going to be some big problems ahead for the collective West. But I thought that Russia was isolated. Doesn't look like they're too isolated. And I thought that China's economy was on the brink of collapse. Doesn't look like it. This meeting between Putin and Xi really spooked just about everyone in the collective West. Everyone is panicked, spooked at this meeting between Putin and Xi. And that hug, oh, that hug. It's giving people in the collective West nightmares. So let's do a couple of clown worlds and we will wrap this video up. And let's start off with Kirby, I guess. It's a good place to start off from. So Kirby was talking to the media at the White House, and Kirby was asked about the hug between Putin and Xi, and here's what Kirby had to say.
Very quickly, what was your reaction to seeing Russian President Putin and Chinese President Xi exchanging hugs?
Exchanging hugs? Well, that's nice for them.
Did you think that was a purposeful show of public display to send any kind of message to the U.S. or otherwise?
Oh man, I'm not good at talking about personal human bodily affection one way or the other, so I think I'll leave it to these two gents to talk about why they thought it was good to hug one another.
So that was Kirby's response to Putin and Xi hugging. And Kirby was also asked about the cooperation between Russia and China. And here is what Kirby said to that.
No surprise that these two leaders continue to try to develop this burgeoning relationship, but they're also two leaders that don't have a long history of working together, and officials in both governments that aren't necessarily all that trustful of the other. What they have in common is a desire to challenge the international rules-based order, challenge the network of alliances and partnerships that the United States enjoys and was by. I wouldn't go so far as to say we weren't concerned about this relationship and where it's going. Of course we are, and we're watching it closely.
So that's Kirby talking about how Russia and China, they don't have a history of working with each other. They don't really know each other too well, according to Kirby. Not sure where he gets that from, but it's okay. We'll go with that one. Russia and China, they don't know each other very well, so. All right, that's Kirby's cope. And then Kirby also said that Putin and Xi, what this is really all about is challenging the international rules-based order. That international rules-based order. How dare they challenge the international rules-based order? Oh, man. Anyway, that was Kirby. That's our clown world. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. Go to the Duran shop, 15% off. All merch, use the code GetReady15. And also go to Reverse Gear shop. Pick up some Reverse Gear merch. I will put a link down below in the description box. Take care.